Good morning, everybody. Again, we are on tier two. Tier two is really looking at graphic design. Graphic design is a wonderful form of art that allows people to really use typography and graphics and color to really simplify how they're communicating something. Some of these origami papers actually are very good at showing you how a cat, as we know, walking by us in our neighborhood looks very different from this very graphically represented cat that you see on this origami paper. It's stripped away all of the fur, all the little details that would make probably a realistic drawing of a cat. Instead, it's looking at the bare essentials so that we still understand that when we look at this, it's a cat, right? Of course, he's got sunglasses. I don't know how many cats you've seen walking around with sunglasses, but we can have a little fun with this. This is another one. Okay, very simple. Using a compass, which I don't happen to have here at the house. Rulers, things that you can trace that are around lids from containers are fine if you want to do something that's very circular. And lastly, this origami paper has a lot of very simplified graphics of different items. We are going to be focusing again on Aries. Now, Aries, as we know, is a constellation in the zodiac. For some of you guys, you might be Aries. You'll look at the Latin assignments, and we're supplementing the Latin assignments with this assignment. The first thing I want you to do is I want you to think about if you were to take Aries and try to create that as a graphic representation, what would it look like? How can you simplify something that might be photorealistic to something that is more graphic? A lot of you love sports teams, sport logos out there, clothing logos are all graphic representations of a company. They're actually what's called branding, okay? Especially you Nike lovers and your Beats lovers, right? Their logos are usually emblazoned on their products as well as connected to a lot of the advertising that they do. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to look and see if you have any colored paper. Colored paper would be great to do. This could be done as collage, or you may draw this. I would recommend with design that you have something that is a straight edge or something that you can use as a straight edge. Ruler. This is not my most ideal ruler, but we'll use it. Scissors. If you have X-Acto knives, that's fine, but scissors are perfectly fine for now. Make sure you have a pencil, eraser. If you only have construction paper, that's fine. If you have any other solid papers, that's absolutely fine too. Be creative. Make sure you have something kicking around the house. So the first thing I'm going to say is you are going to think about what would Aries look like if you graphically represented Aries? The full animal, the ram, the head, just the horns. It is up to you again to decide what you think you need to show to still convey that it is related to Aries. Those of you who are familiar with Dodge Ram, they actually have quite a logo for their cars. You've got sports teams in the US that also use a very graphic representation on their uniforms and their other materials and their sports apparel when it comes to, their particular logos for their teams. So the first thing I guess I want you to think about is I want you to think about how you can come up with something that's a very simple drawing of your graphic designed Aries or your ram. Again, I'm going to keep it simple just for demonstration purposes, but I do love the idea of working with something that is a horn. And I'm just going to draw it just to have an understanding about where I might want to go with this horn. Okay. If you can take a look at it, you can see I'm going with something that's very curvilinear. Again, I don't know, I just sort of like it, so I'm going to go with it. Once I have an idea of where I want to go with the shape, okay, because that's where you are, shape, I want to think about no more than 2 to 3 colors that I want to use. When you're thinking about graphic, you're thinking about contrast. Um, High contrast colors that really are very opposite when they're next to each other. Street signs are high contrast, yellow and black, so that you can see them. Black and white is high contrast. You may also look at colors that are more low contrast. And low contrast could mean greens, that varying greens. Okay? You don't get the same contrast, but you can still use that. So think about 2 to 3 colors that you may want to use in your design. For my purposes, I'm going to use lime. I'm going to use black. I don't know, it speaks to me. So, and I'm actually going to throw some red in there. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my design and I'm going to think about the basic shape of it and what color I want to start with, because you are going to be collaging this. So you will need a glue stick too. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work with red. And remember, if you cut this out, I draw on the back of the paper, because if you don't, and you draw on this side and you cut it out, you don't really want to see the lines. And when you flip it over, it will be backwards. So my suggestion is try to draw it backwards on the back of your paper. All right. So when you cut it out, it will be the right way. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is simply going to trace it. Now, for those of you who are very digitally interested in doing this, you can do this on your computer as well. There are drawing programs, Photoshop, Illustrator. There's also some really great graphics programs that aren't too complicated, but that are connected to Google Classroom, I believe. So you can always work on something on your phone or anything that you can find that's available. You shouldn't have to spend really any money on this. So this is a very inexpensive way of doing it, especially if you're not as tech savvy with doing this on a digital device. Okay, so I'm cutting out the horn very carefully. I'm following my pencil line. If I don't like something, I can go back and I can recut it. Smooth, tight craftsmanship is really important. Okay, graphic design is very clean. And you can see. Okay. So the next thing I want you to do is I want you to just get that onto your paper, because the paper will be what you're eventually going to take a picture of and upload to us. Okay. I'm going to glue this down next to my sketch. Okay, I'm going to work from the center out so I don't get any folds or wrinkles. One thing that's really helpful is if you have an extra piece of paper that's not gluey and you put it on top, you can just burnish it down. And you can see that is the start of my graphic design horn. Now I want to do more than just that. I want to look at how I can add some more details to that. So I'm thinking about adding some black and some lime. You may want to pre-plan this a little bit better than I am, but right now, for the sake of just showing you, we're going to get this going. Okay. Again, I'm going to work on the back. Lots of times in logos, you'll see a highlight. You will see maybe a shape within a shape. Maybe there'll be a letter. Careful, make sure that you're doing them backwards so they fit nicely onto your logo. If you cut something and it's not fitting in there very well, my suggestion would be just to retrim it. Again, we are having you do your best. Once you're happy with where it's going to go, I want you to glue it in. Oh, again, if you're doing it digitally, that's fine. So I'm not going to make this too complicated. I'd like you guys to try to really think about doing something a little bit more complex than I am. These videos can get long and I want to try to keep them a little shorter. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create maybe a few little markings on the horn. So with that said, sometimes you can fold your paper in half and you can get multiples of the same thing that you've cut. That way you know you've got the same pattern going on, okay? If it's not fitting in there very well, just take a look at what you can do to trim it. Done. Get it in there with glue. Think about, how can I create as little as possible in my logo, but still have it read as something that is recognizable or becomes a mark for something else? This is not finished, but this is on its way. Imagine these black pieces continuing to break that up so it feels like the extension of the horn. So good luck with that. Once you've finished it, please take a picture of it and upload it. It'd be great if we saw your sketch next to it. Thank you.